Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Leaving, huh?
Okay, so I'll start, ma'am.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. A very good morning to one and all. I, Sweetie Singh, welcome you all to the day 2 of Virtual Student Development Program on Conversational AI. SDP is an initiative by the Information Technology Department with an aim to help students in grooming their overall personality and bringing out the innovative techniques with mentoring guiding us on the same way. I would now like to welcome our speaker for today, Ms. Michelle Prayil. She has done the Bachelor of Engineering in IT from Vidyavardhini's College of Engineering. That is, she is one of our college alumni from 2016 batch. She is a senior conversation designer and a founding member of the conversation design team at Haptic. An engineer by degree, she has been a professional content writer and UX writer for more than 6 years. Since 2017, she has designed over 50 virtual assistant authored Haptics playbook on the fundamental of virtual assistant design and enjoys and visualizing the growing conversation design space, especially in India. So, without any further delay, I request Ms. Michelle Prayil, ma'am, to commence with the session.
All right. Thank you so much, Sweetie, for that lovely introduction. I hope I'm audible and everything's clear. Please keep the chat going. And it's, as you can all guess, it's very it's a surreal moment for me to be here talking to students in the opposite side of the room. And I'm really thankful to the Department of IT for having me back on this time as a teacher. So before I jump into the session, a little bit of housekeeping. We are live and recording. You all know this. There's no need to mute and keep your video on because we are not doing this on YouTube, which I did not expect. But please do keep your questions and feedback coming in chat because I am really hoping to keep this session very brief. Maybe about 20 minutes where I talk and the rest of it maybe answering your questions if there are any. Now, before I jump into into the session and share my stories, I'd just like to share a little bit of a background about what I do at Haptic and what we're about to study and learn. I actually so here's our goals. We'll first learn about conversational AI. I'll give an introduction to conversation design, which is my job, which is what I do. And finally, we'll answer your questions. So that's going to be our goals for the session today. And a little bit about Haptic. This is not to sell Haptic as a company or anything. I think it's important that you understand the credentials of whoever's speaking so you know why they're qualified to talk about what they're talking about. So I joined right after I graduated from VSET. With a degree in IT, I knew that I did not want to be an engineer or a programmer. I did enjoy technology. I love technology, and I loved understanding, reading, and learning about it. But I really enjoyed writing. That was one of the most enjoyable things that I wanted to do for the long term. I was a part of the magazine committee here. I'm not very sure how many years it's been since the committee started. I hope it's going strong still. And right after I graduated, I got into a small startup as a writer. And I spent a year as a content writer designing content for the app, for the app called Beta. It was this very short-lived entertainment-based app for millennials. And a year after I, wrote at First Notify, I moved to Haptic as a content strategist, and that's when Haptic was taking its shift into B2B enterprise conversational AI. And we learn about what it is and things, but Haptic used to be a B2C app for consumers to reach out and say and ask for assistance for small tasks. And it was completely run by humans at that point, around 300 people. And that's when Haptic as a company said, hey, why don't we take this solution? We've automated a lot of our conversations, a lot of these tasks that people can do. They took that technology that we used internally and decided to sell it to some of the world's largest brands. And I won't read this out, but Haptic, recently acquired by Geo, is currently one of the world's largest conversational AI platforms. I joined Haptic when we were just thinking and starting about selling virtual assistants and thinking about how we can take this art of designing virtual assistants to the outside world. And as I was the first member in the conversation design team, and we've gone from that to all of the statistics that you see, and we have a 5-member conversation design team in-house right now that works on building virtual assistants. So yeah, that's that about my credentials. Why I'm like I think I can at least give you a basic overview of this technology and what it can do for the world and how you can explore it a bit more. Okay, so moving along, we're at 10:06 now. Maybe about 10 more minutes, 10, 15 minutes of listening to me, you'll have to bear. And in the interest of keeping this very fun, I want to understand, when I first spoke to Anagha ma'am about having this session, I wanted to know whether I assumed that conversational AI was a part of your AI and machine learning curriculum at that point. And I was very surprised to know that it's not. So first things first, I want to know whether you guys have experienced this technology in some way, and if so, where. So I'll drop a comment with this link in chat, and I'm hoping that, yeah, okay. So I've sent a link in the chat. I'm hoping that Sweetie, one of the organizers, someone can just pick this link up, share it with the participants. We'll see how many people fill up the form, and we'll see the results of it live at the end of the session. So yeah, let's keep an eye on what happens there with the responses. Okay. So please do keep filling this up as the session progresses. It's a simple two-question form that you can just quickly fill up, and we'll see the responses at the end. All right. So now that brings us to what conversational AI is. Now, conversational AI is basically any interface that allows you to communicate, that allows a virtual simulated system, basically a computer, to communicate or perform the tasks that were typically done by people, right? And it's when you look at it, when you think about it practically, we've not seen the responses yet, but I'll tell you this: everyone who's attending or watching this session has conversational AI with them somewhere, and it's usually in their device. And as you can probably guess, it's within Google. You must have seen Google Assistant, the virtual assistant on your phone. It's Siri if you are an Apple user, Cortana if you're on Microsoft. All of these virtual assistants that you can talk to achieve a complete a task, be it small or big, is an example of conversational artificial intelligence. And this whole domain of conversational AI, it's a combination of different technologies that allow computers to be able to simulate conversations and do what they do. And in general, if you think about conversational AI, there's two types of conversational AI. There's general intelligence, that's virtual assistants that can talk about a lot of things just like a human being would. A human being doesn't just know about one small, very narrow, focused domain. They know about a lot of things. And in the same way, we have general intelligence, and then there's focused domain-specific intelligence that can only do one task. So this would be a virtual assistant that can just generate a bill for you. It's only one thing that it can do, and it's just focused on doing that. It cannot communicate or talk about a lot of topics. But an example of another general intelligence bot would be, I'm not sure if you may have heard this, but there's one of the Lebner Prize winning bots, one of the best, most well-known virtual assistants in the world is a bot called Mitsuku. And Mitsuku is, you can just go to any website. It's on the Pandora Bots website. You can just search for Mitsuku, and you can talk to her about anything in the world, and she'll reply back like a human being. And that's an example of general intelligence, where the bot is able to communicate and think about and speak about a general variety of topics. So that's two types of conversational AI, and especially in the B2B business domain, when you think about how companies use this, it's very specific intelligence. They build virtual assistants that can do a certain task for you. You all mostly recently, Vodafone has been sending out a message saying that, hey, we're on WhatsApp. Why don't you talk to us on WhatsApp? That's an example of a specific, very, very focused chatbot that is built to do a few tasks. And it's there, and the designers who make them in a way that you can achieve task A, B, C. It's very fixed. So yeah, that's just an introduction to what conversational AI is. I hope that the title is not very, it doesn't seem like a far off concept or very abstract. It's very, very much real. It's in your pockets. Most people have used it, even though unwittingly. Even Swiggy, if you've ordered food through Swiggy, you must have seen the support section where you can just click a few buttons and it's a very automated series of tasks. So even that's an example of a chatbot. Very, very automated, but a chatbot nonetheless. So yeah, with that, we'll quickly move on and just talk about the three pillars of conversational AI. I'm no engineer right now. Like, I have an engineering degree, but um, being from in the technology space, being a technologist, in some sense, my aim is to just at least introduce a few basic concepts, and teach you what I need to know on a day-to-day basis to do my job. I'm a conversation designer. I'm not a full-time programmer, but the hope is that with this, you at least understand the technology and the domain. Right. So, what are the pillars of conversational AI? Obviously, if you look at this blank screen, think of this whole slate as artificial intelligence. So everything else that you'll see come on the screen are sub-parts of this. And artificial intelligence is this big overarching discipline that covers anything related to making a machine smart. Artificial intelligence, right? So if it's a robot, a refrigerator, a car, a software application, if you're making it smart, then it's AI. So now we'll move on to the next big pillar that contributes to conversational AI, which is natural language processing. And as you can very well guess, we're all engineers, we all guess answers to write them in exams. Very logically, you'd say natural language processing is being able to process a human spoken natural language in a way that you, without needing a human being to talk in bits or bytes, right? 100. You don't need to speak that, everybody does not need to code in order to talk to a virtual assistant. Like, I cannot even imagine that. So natural language processing, it facilitates human to machine communication without a human needing to talk in any programming language. So it's a subfield of linguistics, computer science, information engineering, artificial intelligence, natural language programming. The people who work in NLP are not all engineers. There's a bunch. There's linguists and other allied fields as well that fall under that contribute to NLP. Now the next big block that we'll see here is machine learning. We have machine learning engineers. It's a very, very important core role to what we do at Haptic. Our ML team is the heart of the technology of our company, and our here's what machine learning is when it comes to conversational AI, right? So machine learning is teaching any machine to learn by itself, teaching any system to learn by itself. And all of these definitions you've probably been already taught. I'm pretty sure I was taught this when I was a student. But putting it together, it's just so surprising that these are the jigsaw pieces that fit together to finally contribute, right? So the point is that with a virtual assistant, you should not have to teach it everything for it to know everything. There are highly automated virtual assistants, but even then, machine learning is what helps the virtual assistant get smart over time without that much intervention. And ML is used in very, very small pieces throughout. You would not expect. Everyone thinks that, oh, machine learning must only be used for the assistant to self learn. It's not just that. There are so many small pieces here and there um, that 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 use ML to identify patterns, to take a huge bunch of information, and to so, for example, we in our proprietary machine learning stack, our from what I understand from my team, uh, we taught our underlying machine learning model by pulling a bunch of open source information from Wikipedia. Huge amount of information, huge amount of information. You take that uh, and then teach your model, extrapolate information from that, and then teach a virtual assistant so that it has an underlying base level of knowledge. You must have heard about GPT-3, which was making big waves in the whole tech industry, which is an example of a model that has been pre-trained on openly available data. So machine learning, very, very exciting field, lots to do there. And then finally, the last piece in the whole puzzle is deep learning. And deep learning it's ML. As you can see, I would suggest that you very carefully observe how these three circles fit in together, because that's so important. Natural language processing, big bucket, falls. Uh, it's a combination of different technologies. Machine learning, it's not a part of natural language processing, but it has an overlap, and deep learning firmly falls inside machine learning. So all of these technologies, when put together like this, uh, form the pillars of conversational AI. And deep learning is basically ML, but when it's applied to very large data sets in order to train a model. This is the way I explain, right? Take a large body of knowledge like Wikipedia, like an encyclopedia, and you want to extract learning and knowledge out of it. So deep learning is used for that. So with this extremely abstract idea and picture of how conversational AI, at least the underlying technology base, fits together, let's quickly move on to what does it practically mean. So you have NLP, you have machine learning, you have deep learning. Practically, here's what happens, right? A person, whenever they talk, they communicate with a combination of an intent and an entity. I'll explain what an intent and an entity is because it's important. You see in this example here, right? A person is saying, hey, I want to set a reminder for 3 p.m. tomorrow. Intent, like the English word intent, is what the person is intending to do. What is the task that they're asking the virtual assistant to do? And entity is a set of values that allow them to complete that intent, right? So another example would be, hey, give me my policy details for policy number 1234. Very clearly, the intent here is I want my policy, give me my policy details, and the entity is the policy number itself that allows the virtual assistant to complete a task. So an intent and an entity, once it passes through this whole, any set technologies that are required to complete the whole conversational AI, to complete a conversational AI stack, once it's processed, a bot can reply by saying that, okay, I got the entity, this is the time, and the intent of the user was to set a reminder. So now I can reply with, I can set the reminder and tell the user that, hey, I set a reminder for 3 p.m. tomorrow. So with all of these major buckets in play, that's how you can complete any task within conversational AI. So uh, that's primarily all I wanted to explain about conversational AI as a whole. There are, however, as you can imagine, even though this stack is fairly well set, there are several challenges in the field of conversational AI, and these are the engineering challenges that people in companies and research institutes and in colleges are trying to solve. So I've just put together a list. I obviously I don't know the answer to how these challenges are going to be solved. But these are very interesting topics for projects, which, if anyone finds conversational AI interesting, I highly recommend that you guys go ahead, do a little bit of research about it, and see how you can solve it, because these are things that companies will pay you to solve. Right? So, all right. So let me quickly pull that up. Yeah. So first example I'll give here is, with conversational AI. The first challenge really is understanding human emotion and nuances. And so at our company, in the conversation design team, we often like to go back and look at analytics data, right, to see how people talk to bots. And it's heartbreaking at times to see how frustrated people get with bots, because let's face it, right, we've all used terrible bots out there where they can't reply, it just breaks, it just overall feels like a dumb piece of software. And one of the biggest issues is that people talk with a lot of subtext and nuance when they communicate, even through chat. Even when people are typing, it's a little bit more disciplined than when they're talking. They tend to type a little more formally. Even then, um, they type with an inherent understanding of emotions. It's a very human thing to do. And bots, unfortunately, are not able to understand that. So an example would be someone saying, "I'm dying here," with a smiley face at the end, right? So someone tells a joke, they're like, "Oh, I'm dying." That's so hilarious. But to a bot, the word dying immediately has a negative context. What do you mean, I'm dying? Then most likely a bot would send you a link to a suicide helpline or say, "Hey, don't kill yourself. Human life is valuable." But the meaning for the person was extremely different. Um, or someone just saying, uh, "You're you're stupid. You're stupid good," which, when they're trying to say that you're wonderful. The meaning is positive, the words used are negative. And this is because of the training data that's available out there. With English, at least, you have training, lots of information on the internet. Most of the internet is in English. But imagine, and we'll come to that problem later, which is multilingual bots. But this is one of the problems, which is understanding emotion and nuances, understanding when a person gets angry. But a very practical example of a problem would be, how do you know that a bot should immediately stop and transfer the chat to a human assistant? When people start saying things like, "Hey, I hate this conversation. What is an acceptable level of escalation?" Some people will say, "I did not like this conversation," just to end the conversation. But some people might say, "I did not like this conversation. I hate this brand," which is a clear trigger to transfer the chat. So understanding these kinds of emotion and nuances is one example of a challenge in conversation AI. The second is context-based transitions. So when I say context-based transitions, I mean things like people in chat, when they say you've presented a person with 3 options for purses. It's a virtual assistant where you can buy things. A context-based transition would be someone, they click on maybe the first option in chat. If you've seen a Facebook bot or any web bot, you have cards that you can click. Say they click on one, and then maybe they don't like it later. Then they go back saying, "Hey, can you please show me the second one?" But by then, it's a human thing to keep in mind what the second one is. What is the second one? Or can you show me? Can you? I wasn't actually talking about that. I was talking about what I told you earlier. What is that? What are all of these pronouns? Because it's easy, even difficult for a human to understand what pronouns mean, but for a bot, it's even more difficult. So retaining context, deciding up till when to remember certain things, what to remember, again, a difficult problem to solve. And the third problem I'm going to present here are multilingual conversations. And we've very practically faced this with all of our WhatsApp bots, especially. So in India, everyone likes WhatsApp. We build a lot of virtual assistants on WhatsApp for things like the government COVID helpline was built by it was one of the very basic assistants built by Haptic. It just came out at the right time, so it helped the government. It's a great story to share. But very practically, people's behavior on WhatsApp is completely unprecedented. We have seen examples of people sending good morning forwards to the bot. Literally, the good morning messages that you get, they're sending it to a virtual assistant. Who knows why? They talk in half Hindi, half English conversations, mixing Hindi statements like HAI, hair, and for a bot it seems similar to high because the training data is very very similar, but mixing languages in text, writing in both Devanagari script and Latin script, which is Latin script is obviously English alphabets and Devanagari script is proper Hindi letters. So mixing up all of these, it's this wonderful domain that if we can figure out, and recently Google had this L210, I believe the name of the convention was, where they spoke about all of their work in trying to build uh, language friendly things for the Indian subcontinent, and language friendly products for the Indian subcontinent, making search friendly. And this is one of the problems that they are trying to tackle at scale. You have over 1 billion people here who are on the internet who are talking. So multilingual conversations and solving, how do you quickly and easily understand conversations in so many different regional languages and dialects that are mixed with English, mixed with other regional dialects. So that's another big bucket uh, of research that's definitely an open challenge. And there are so many smaller projects that you can take up once you delve into conversational AI. And I'd be happy to share any resources that you would like at the end if there are any questions. So yeah, that's all I have about conversational AI. I did come in first wanting to just talk about conversation design, but I believe that having at least this much of a background gives you an insight into what this domain is. So now moving on, I'll talk about what I do and what I know best, which is conversation design. So what is conversation design? Now at Haptic, when we started building bots, we didn't know what a conversation designer would do. There was just this idea that we need to have a content or a copywriter to design the personality of the bot, to design the content and the copies and the messages that it replies with. But if you think about it, at its core, conversation design is the art of crafting the entire end user experience between a virtual assistant and the end user. So it's anything anything that the end user experiences when they're using the virtual assistant. That's the responsibility of a conversation designer. And today, a conversation designer, if you go, there is a whole community out there of conversation designers for different domains. In fact, I just had a talk in the morning with the community in Austin, in Texas, and it's a massive domain. It's not just big companies like Google who are trying to solve this problem. There are tools for conversation design. There's a community that enables conversation design. And primarily, the job of a conversation designer is to uh, take a requirement of when someone says, "I want a virtual assistant." What are they trying to build? What are the problems that they want to solve? Uh, who are they solving this for? Which platform should they solve this for? Helping any brand pull all of that and boil it down into a very simple conversation between a bot and the person, uh, taking into consideration all of the tech requirements that are there, taking into consideration um, different personalities of people who might be attending, creating a personality for the bot. So all of that falls under the conversation design domain. And the reason I am talking about this to a class of engineering students is because I remember, like personal story segue. I remember at the end of my college when I wanted to look for a technology allied role, which was not core programming. At that time, it felt like, oh, there is nothing out there. There is no such technology allied role which uses the knowledge of an engineer but doesn't require me to spend my whole day programming. And there are what I want to say with all of this is that, hey, there are roles out there that are built for you, even if you don't want to be a programmer. Even if, and I know this is sacrilege, but it's important to know that engineers are not just programmers at the end of the day. There's so many things you can do with your skill set. So, talking about a skill set, here's what goes into conversation design. Even if none of you are writers, or maybe one or two of you are, and I sincerely hope you talk about this to other people as well. It's a combination of UX design, AI training, linguistics, product design, and copywriting, and bringing all of this together is conversation design. So your knowledge of engineering, your knowledge of writing, your knowledge of UX design. your ability to drive a call with a client. All of these come together to and they boil down to conversation design. Um, I very simply like to say that I'm a writer. I also design wire, not wireframes, but user journeys and user paths, keeping my user experience skills in mind. I help a company design a product. That's where the product design thinking comes in. And I also tell my developers or the engineers who go ahead and build the designs that I give them, that I tell them how certain words, certain meanings should be understood. So I'll explain what AI training and linguistics is, why that skill set is on here. So AI training, basically with a model, say you have a mutual fund board, right? I want to learn about mutual funds, and um, I want to buy mutual funds, or tell me about mutual funds. They're different intents. I want to learn about mutual funds indicates somebody who is very new, who is in the exploratory stage of buying, and I would want them to have a very, very different experience as opposed to somebody who is just there to see mutual funds or purchase mutual funds. Their intent is much more direct, which is a very subtle thing, and it's easy to just lump it together. Yeah, tell me about mutual funds, buy mutual funds, learn about mutual funds, same thing. We should all just go to buy. But if you think about it semantically, it's very different in terms of the intention, and this goes back to the intent piece. So understanding that, and recognizing that and building a journey for it is also what a conversation designer does. And when you put all of this together, that's what ultimately is my bread and butter, and the bread and butter of so many conversation designers out there. And yeah, and that's actually it. I didn't have much else to talk about. I didn't want to force talk about conversation design unless there were any questions. I do believe there's a small list of questions that I had been sent, but I'll just quickly check with Sweetie if there are any questions out here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable knowledge and experience with all of us. We are now open to questions. Kindly post your questions in the chat box. Ma'am would address them all.
Awesome. Do we have any questions lined up, Sweetie, or should we just dive into some of the questions I had beforehand?
I'll just put them in the chat, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Sure. So the first question I see here is, what are the top tips for a conversation design interview? Okay, okay. I would say if you're interviewing as a conversation designer, number one, be interested in the field. It's very often that, and it's not just with conversation design, with any interview really. Um, when the candidate just doesn't care about the field that much, like if you ask them, hey, what are your top virtual assistants, they say, hey, I don't know, I've never used a virtual assistant. So you need to show interest in your field, be observant, and be ready to back up your logic when you say any statement. um, most interviews these days are not those traditional go and prepare 10 questions and come back kind of interviews. They're very logic driven. The key is not to memorize things, it's to explain things and explain your logic behind them. Know about the field, observe what's around you. So, yeah, just all of this, and have a portfolio in place, obviously. A conversation designer is a designer at the end of the day. So, having a portfolio, it's important. All right. See another one. The next question is, do conversation designers need to have a technical background? No, they don't have to be. They don't have to come from a technical background. In fact, there are peop- larger companies, they hire comedians to write content for chatbots because they want humor, and uh, people people in this field come from filmmaking backgrounds. They're linguists, and it's a very, very varied field. So no, you don't need to have a technical background, but it helps to be able to understand what an API is, It helps to understand the platform really well. It helps if you understand what a machine learning model is, because otherwise it's really tough to understand. I think we'll just quickly take this question by Anvita Suvarna. Okay, so this question is, how exactly do you become a conversation designer? What background and experience? Great question. The answer is there's no one path. Some of you could become conversation designers, and you have an engineering degree. I have seen people from very, very varied backgrounds become conversation designers by learning, by taking a conversation design course. The Conversation Design Institute has a good course. There's a bunch of good courses out there that have just started, but they do courses, they practically mock up some bots, uh, they do bot wars. There are so many crazy things going on the internet. So any of this, express your interest in the field, and it's a very, very welcoming field. In all my experience, I've never seen a community, even internationally, which is just so open and friendly to new people. So yeah, there's no background as such required, but to get in, obviously you'll have to prove some expertise with a bot, with a platform. There are so many open good platforms like Google Dialogflow you can experiment with. There's IBM Watson, and all of these have their free programs as well. So go and build a bot on a platform. They require sometimes real core engineering skills. Most of them don't, but if you are a programmer, you can make use of it. Okay, next question by Kaustubh Garat. There is, are there any internships available in this field or any specific path to learn more about this? Yes. Just check for conversation design internships. There are a lot. Just search for a few different keywords. Obviously, Google search is, I think, the most underrated skill that you can have when you start looking for a job. Know how to search on Google. So look for chatbot developer, bot developer, virtual assistant, designer. Look for some allied keywords in that direction, and you should find that they're rare. They're mostly on LinkedIn. People just post saying, "Hey, I'm looking for someone. Can you help out?" So follow all of those hashtags and just keep an eye out. There's definitely a lot. There are short-term projects, freelance projects available too. And to learn more about this, I would just say have a read a few books. There are a couple of great books by. Let me just show you quickly. Yeah, there's a book by Amir Shivat called Designing Bots. And there's a book by Kathy Pearl on chatbot design as well. Designing for Virtual Voice Interfaces is the name of that book. So yeah, highly recommend that you guys check them out. There are so many Medium publications as well, where you can just go, just search for Chatbots Live, Chatbots Magazine. So many resources available there. It's a very prolific kind of community. So yeah. Let's see. I see just one more question here. Okay. There's a question here called, what are your top tips for conversation design interview? I think we've covered that. Just be prepared, have a portfolio. Same rules apply. And yeah, you should be good for an interview if you know what you're talking about. Let me see if there's a new question. For a fresher to pick up this skill, what will be needed? Okay. Okay, so for a fresher to pick up this skill, interest is needed. Little bit of skill. You need to be a writer. Um, we have found over the years, we've hired a bunch of people, tried to do a bunch of experiments. You need to at least be able to write for an audience and write well in whatever language you want, in English or Hindi, Marathi. But writing well is it's one of those skills that's very difficult to teach on the job. Everything else you can learn on the job. You learn technology, learn how to wireframe, learn UX laws by studying a bit. But that underlying skill of being able to write is important. And by writing, I don't mean you need to be able to write great books or anything. Just write in grammatically correct sentences in whatever language you want, Hindi, Marathi, English, whatever. Yeah, that's I think a few things that will help with the pressure. Are there any other questions? Do I need years of experience for a proper job? Okay, I'll spend a couple of minutes on this because I can understand like this is one of my worries also. For a proper job, do you need years of experience? Yes, people will ask for it. But do you need to have completed a lot of jobs for years of experience? No. I became a writer with an engineering degree. Nobody wants to hire a writer with zero experience, only with an engineering degree. And the reason that happened is obviously very grateful for all the opportunities I had. And the key there is to have something to show, right? Do an internship, have something to show in your portfolio to prove that you can do the job. That is it. Even when today we hire, if there is somebody who's very new, has only a year of experience, there are junior roles as well. And the key is to just have a portfolio, do some dummy projects, be it engineering, be it programming, be it, like I tell my siblings this, that have something to show that I can hire you and you will do a job competently. Uh, and it can just be dummy projects. You can make a bot for Swiggy. You can just show it in your portfolio without actually Swiggy actually hiring you. You don't need that. So have a few dummy projects in your portfolio. Make a portfolio, very very important. Make a portfolio. Uh, just Google this. I'm not going to teach portfolio design on here, but there are lots of websites that you can follow. You can just make a PDF portfolio. You put it on the website. All of you are engineers, so and very very creative. So many free websites that allow you to get amazing graphics without putting in that much effort, like Canva. So yeah, have an amazing portfolio. It should be fine. Can it be started from our third year itself? Yes, yes. I started writing when I was in third year and did a bunch of small freelance projects for very, very, very tiny amounts of money. Looking back, I should have charged more, but do all of that. Put it in your portfolio. Get permission from your clients before you put things in your portfolio. Very important. But yes, you can start from your third year. Any platforms which you would recommend for us for conversational AI? Yeah. IBM Cloud is free. I see some. So this is a question by Ashwini, and Shubhamkar has replied. Yes. You can just explore Google Dialogflow. I don't know if Alexa allows you to make free voice skills, but there's so many demo trials that you can uh, platforms where you can just create a small demo bot or dummy bot. Um, there is a there are tools like Botmock, which I've not put in my slide anywhere, but tools like Botmock that let you do conversation design at scale as well. So definitely check that out. Okay. Is there any other relevant question, Sweetie, or are we good to close? There's a question here called tell something about graphics. If the person asking can clarify what they mean by graphics, that would be great. But if you mean how to design things that look pretty, if you're not a designer, I just suggest looking at a platform like Canva that'll let you design pretty stuff without knowing too much about graphic design. Yeah, I think that's it for the questions. So we can, Sweetie, is there any other question?
I'll just check, ma'am, if there is any more. Yes, there is.
Is there any easy way to train a bot? Yes, there are easy ways to train bots, but they're not necessarily good ways. You can have you can check paraphrase generators. So when you say training a bot, uh, since we have a few minutes, I'll just go into a little bit of detail here. When you say training a bot, you need to teach a bot to understand synonyms and variations of certain terms, right? So just to do that, the manual way is for a person to sit down, think of 10 variations, and create a set of training data for a bot. Easier would be to just go to any paraphrase generator online. Lots of free tools available out there that will generate synonyms of a certain term for you that can help uh, train a bot. But easy ways are not good ways. And right now, we don't have very amazing synonym paraphrase generators. I think I think there's a question here called, if I'm confused between tech and this, shall I start with this one? By this, if you mean conversation design is a part of tech. So maybe just start building a bot, just go to one of those platforms that everyone's put out there, one of the platforms I suggested. Just try to start building a bot. Your tech skills and your design skills don't have to be on opposite ends of the spectrum. You can use both to create a virtual assistant. Use your programming skills, use your design skills, put all of that, use your writing skills, put all of that together to create an amazing virtual assistant. So, yeah, you can just start by creating a bot. Very simple answer to that. Yeah. Okay. I think we're good.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's it. Okay, there are no more questions. Okay, perfect.
Thank you for having me on. This has been fun.
Thank you
I was
so much, ma'am, for joining us.
Yeah.
For
So
lastly, I would just like to say a few lines. All good things must come to an end, and the same thing can be said about our session. I consider it a privilege to extend the vote of thanks on behalf of the management and all the students of our college. I take the honor to thank our speaker, Ms. Michelle Prayil ma'am, for gracing the event with her presence and sharing her valuable knowledge with all of us. AI is the future and the need of the hour. Having knowledge of AI would not only bring competitive advantage, but also will add value to your knowledge. This is exactly what I learned from this session. We have been fortunate enough to be backed up by our faculty members with their guidance throughout. Lastly, thanking all my fellow students for showing their interest and making this event a grand success. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining with us.
thanks for having me. See you on the internet.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you.